Recently, somebody reminded me of an old webinar I did where I mentioned that we would be witnessing a rare occurrence around this time. I had actually totally forgotten about it, but this month, between March 14th and March 20th, there's a good chance that you will be able to see Venus in the morning just before sunrise, and then on the same day, on the evening of the same day, you'll also be able to see Venus as an evening star just after sunset. Now, how can Venus rise ahead of the sun in the morning and then set after the sun in the evening? That sounds impossible, doesn't it? It's no wonder that it took a while for our ancestors to realize that they were looking at the same planet appearing on both sides of the sun on the same day. It's a pretty amazing phenomenon that can happen to only one planet, Venus, and only every 8 years, following Venus's 8-year rhythm under very specific conditions. But this time it's really exceptional because we also have eclipses going on. So this is a very rare event. Let's take a look at these conditions. First of all, this phenomenon can only happen when Venus is retrograde. When she's going backwards through the zodiac, she's located on our side of the sun, between the sun and Earth. So that means that Venus is closer to Earth when she's retrograde, and that's important because the relative distance between Venus and the ecliptic, which is the path of the sun, can be more extreme in that case. All of the planets follow the sun's path, but most of the time they're a little above or below the ecliptic. Venus needs to get as far above the ecliptic as possible and reach a northern latitude of at least +6 degrees so that she can avoid the beams of the sun from a vertical position. No other planets can reach a latitude as high as Venus can. As a side note, keep in mind that we have to flip it in the southern hemisphere. We want to see at least a -6 degrees latitude for this phenomenon to occur in the southern hemisphere. Another condition for this double visibility phenomenon, as I would call it, is that it can only happen around February through April, because that's when the Sun and Venus get together in signs that rise very fast in the east and set very slowly in the west. And this is because there's a difference between straight signs and crooked or oblique signs. Look at what happens here. The ecliptic hangs so low over the eastern horizon that it's almost parallel to it. In the tropical zodiac, we divide the ecliptic, the path that all the planets are following, into equal sections of 30 degrees. They're equal parts of 30 degrees each, but they won't take an equal amount of time to rise. Planets in the straight signs will rise one by one, but planets in the crooked signs, even though far apart in our horoscope wheel that depicts longitude, they will rise almost simultaneously because the entire sign is lifted up so quickly, everything in that 30-degree segment appears all at once. And this is exactly the condition we need because if a planet is located high enough above the ecliptic, that planet may appear above the horizon even before a planet that is in an earlier degree in the zodiac. So this is something you can't discover by just looking at the horoscope wheel. This is something we need to observe in the sky, and I spent many, many hours looking at the ephemeris to figure this out. Right now, the sun is in Pisces and Venus is in Aries, which are both fast rising crooked signs. If we look at the chart, we see Venus is behind the sun. The sun will hit the degree of the ascendant first. It's going to hit the horizon first. But look at what's happening here. Venus appears first right before sunrise. How is that possible? Well, look how far away Venus is deviating from the ecliptic. The distance from a planet to the ecliptic is called latitude, and Venus is above the ecliptic with a latitude of about 8 degrees now. That's a lot, and that's partly because she's retrograde closer to the Earth. Venus is also incredibly bright. She is the only planet that can cast a shadow on Earth. So these are all exceptional conditions. Look at this dance that is happening between the Sun and Venus throughout the day. Venus appears to be moving over the Sun, but this only appears to be the case from our perspective on Earth. And the tilt of the Earth and the way we perceive the Sun's path. And then at the end of the day, we see how the ecliptic moves down in a very direct way. Here we have this portion of the zodiac taking plenty of time to disappear under the horizon. And while all these degrees almost rose simultaneously on the eastern horizon in the morning, because the ecliptic was almost parallel to the horizon, now the ecliptic is moving almost perpendicular to the western horizon, allowing the planets to slowly set one by one. This looks more true to what we see in the horoscope wheel. I hope we all get to see this phenomenon because it's pretty rare. And again, this one is very special because it coincides with eclipse season. The last double appearance of Venus happened after the eclipses 8 years ago in 2017. And we would need to go back to the 20th century where there were two occurrences that coincided with the eclipses. Only two. The first was a solar eclipse in Pisces in March 1969. The second one was a lunar eclipse in Libra in 1977. Both times Venus traveled retrograde through Aries, as she's doing now, and that brings some Mars energy into the mix. But Venus is and remains a benefic planet. Even though a stationing phase can be pretty intense, the actual retrograde journey of Venus can bring a lot of good things as well. Plus, now we need to think of the incredibly powerful symbolism of a warrior princess Venus who doesn't disappear under the beams of the sun to die and be reborn, but instead she escapes the sun's beams. And this triumph renders her immortal. And I talked about this in my webinar, Rising from the Dead, about helically rising planets, so I won't repeat myself today, but I will leave a link in the description box below if you're interested in looking into that. Today, for our interpretation, we can just think of the triumph of Venusian things in general, like love, peace, and beauty. And guess what happened back in March 1969? On March 25th, John Lennon and Yoko Ono started their famous in-bed peace protest at the Hilton Hotel in Amsterdam. And that, of course, was a unique and non-violent way of protesting against the Vietnam War. So it couldn't be any clearer, this is really a Venus-Mars dynamic in action. It was an iconic moment in peace activism. Also in March 1969, President Richard Nixon publicly proclaimed his strategic plan to end American involvement in the Vietnam War by the end of 1970, and that signaled a significant shift in US foreign policy and military engagement. Again, Venus in Aries. And we also get some eclipse symbolism through the death of Dwight Eisenhower, who played a pivotal role in World War II. Solar eclipses often announce the death of important figures on the world stage. And again, it's someone closely associated with war. In 1977, there was a lunar eclipse in Libra while retrograde Venus was about to move over the sun, and this marks the end of Indira Gandhi's emergency period in India, which was a challenging period in India's history that repressed civil liberties. A time of censorship and political repression finally came to an end. People regained more individual freedom and so on. In the same month, Spain officially granted workers the right to form their own independent trade unions, and that really marked a pivotal moment in the country's transition away from Franco's dictatorship. So there's a lot of typical Libra legal justice stuff involved here. A lunar eclipse in Libra while ruler Venus is announcing her triumph. Another example from the US at that time is that the House of Representatives adopted its first code of ethics, which was a commitment to governmental transparency and accountability. So those were some mundane examples, and even though the last double phenomenon of 2017 happened after the eclipses, it was still pretty powerful. It started Brexit, for example, or Britain's retreat from the European Union. Plus, the big anti-corruption demonstrations started in Russia. It was also the start of President Trump's immigration policy and all the controversy around it. So we can see how that returned recently and how there's probably more to come. On a more personal level, this significant Venusian moment allows us to conquer something internally or externally, giving us the strength and the courage to conquer and overcome a situation, a conflict, or a habit that has been going on for too long. Directly or indirectly, Venus will demonstrate love's immortality. If you simply observe the imagery in your environment, the symbolism of what's happening, you'll see how the gods are playing. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And go to my website, michellesmidheaven.com, to schedule a reading or to book some tutoring sessions with me. I'd love to hear from you. Have a wonderful eclipse season and let love and peace thrive and triumph in your life. Thank you for watching. Until next time.